Who is the greatest writer of all time? It is an impossible question. Why would I even ask it? No one can answer that in any kind of objective way. Well, I'm going to do that. I've known a ton of old professors and people that I really respect who think the work of Fyodor Dostoevsky is the best of all time. They say that there is no one who can get inside the mind of another human quite like he can. I've had an old friend, an old colleague, who said that Alexander Dumas is the greatest storyteller of all time. And anytime I hear that last name, I just keep thinking of the scene from, what's that movie? The Shawshank Redemption, when the one guy mispronounces his name. It's one of the greatest scenes ever.
By Alexander Dumas.
I currently have a friend who believes that Oscar Wilde is the greatest author that has ever written a word in the English language. Now, I've been in conversation with people about Zadie Smith, Emily Dickinson, Haruki Murakami, which, side note, I kind of think Japanese writers are some of the best storytellers in the business. But anyway, it's a very unsettled debate, and one that is really fun to theorize, but very hard to actually pin down. Because I think there's two parts to seeking out who the greatest author of all time is. The first is their ability to tell a good story. Are they writing something that is enjoyable and entertaining? Is the story actually good? And the second part is, are they a good writer? What does their writing ability look like? Because I've read tons of good stories written by subpar authors. But then I've also read tons of really, really boring stories that put me to sleep from authors who could write the most beautiful book of all time about something so stupid like a paint drawing on a wall or something like that. And I have to say, I think it's a significant difference in the actual style of what the author is trying to do. There are some authors who are trying to woo you with their words. There are some that try to just get out of the way and tell a good story. And for good storytellers, sometimes writing can just be a window in which to see the story. I actually think some of the best writers ever choose not to be flaunty with their words because they want to write so that the writing never makes you stop and say, wow, that was a beautiful sentence. But then there are some authors who don't like the window method and they prefer to paint a picture. It's not moving and every single word is there for a purpose. They want you to be enamored with their words rather than the story that it tells. I think there is a middle ground. Maybe something like stained glass that actually enhances the story that you tell, but is also a window to the story. And the words and the sentences and the writing style serves as a framework and a lens through which a beautiful story can be told more beautifully. This is the needle in a haystack that I look for in a writer. Someone who can do both. They can tell a good story with beautifully written words. And I recently finished a book that I think might be the best thing that I have ever read by any author ever. I'm not over exaggerating that. I think I've read more beautiful words from certain authors, and I think I've read more entertaining stories as well, but the combination of the two, the rare bird of a story like the one I just read, might be the greatest combination of good writing mixed with great storytelling. And it's a novel most of us have already read, or at the very least heard of. It's J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. Big surprise for those of you who are subscribed to the channel. Now, before I go on, I just want to let you know too that I just finished this book. I haven't given it a month of chill time to really be able to sit back and just kind of let it process and let me figure out what this story really means in the grand scheme of literature. But if you like this beautiful work of fiction, make sure you visit my channel and subscribe. I made a video essay almost on every single chapter. No, I actually did make an essay on every single chapter and multiple video essays, sometimes even per chapter. It was really fun, and I think you'd really enjoy it if you're a Tolkien or just a book nerd. So please go check out the channel and subscribe. Make sure you like this video also, and if you want, you can donate to this video or even become a member of my channel where I am going through some brilliant literature for the first time and publishing video essays to talk about some of the themes and the writing and what really strikes me about the stories from a first-timer's perspective. I'm planning to do some George R.R. Martin, some more Tolkien, as I only just finished The Lord of the Rings, and some Brandon Sanderson and just a few others in the future. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. That would really help me make more of these videos. But let me pull up the chart. The chart. I want to talk about the golden goose of good writers. Now, there are some authors who tell terrible stories who are terrible writers. I hate to put her in this category because I know some people love her writing. Actually, who am I kidding? I don't hate to put her in this category. I cannot stand this writer. So this prison right here, this quadrant, is reserved for writers I cannot stand. Because to be honest, I think most writers alive today either do one of the two really well. They're either very good with their words or they do have a pretty good story to tell. This bottom quadrant is just for writers that I can't stand. And this writer that I really can't stand at the very bottom, this little dot right here, is Ayn Rand. I read one of her novels, painfully, and attempted to read another on the recommendation of someone who said her work is just perfectly thoughtful. And I could not get through it. I thought the writing was not only weak and forceful, but I also found the story to just be awful and boring. So she belongs right here. That's my personal preference. All of this chart is my personal preference too. Please don't get mad at me for putting an author that you love somewhere that you don't think they deserve. Or maybe you think they really deserve it. I don't know. This quadrant too has other writers that I just don't like that much. Stephanie Meyer, I guess she wrote a really popular book, but the story just kind of fell flat for me. And then the writing was pretty dreadful to me as well. I think I should have notched her lower, but I don't know. William Faulkner is in this prison, surprisingly, because I've never read a single list online that talks about authors that doesn't heap praise on Faulkner's work, and I cannot stand it. I tried over 50 times to break into novels he wrote. Every one of them I find as unenjoyable and dreadful as the last. And this last one, I've never read anything by E.L. James. I've never read 50 Shades of Grey, but I'm just going to keep that right there. Up in the top left quadrant is my favorite author of all time and the person who I think is the greatest writer of words that has ever lived. I might be overhyping her because you will pick up a novel of hers and not find anything enjoyable or entertaining about the plot. But I certainly think that she is actually the greatest writer as far as writing ability is concerned. And that is Marilynne Robinson. Personal preference. In this mix also, you have George Orwell, who Cyril Connolly once said that he could not blow his nose without moralizing on the state of the handkerchief industry. I love that. I thought Animal Farm was, a bit on the nose. But boy, does this guy know how to write a sentence. And if you doubt that, go read maybe the best essay that I've ever read on writing called Politics and the English Language. Then within this category too, you have writers that I find brilliant writers that I just could not break into their storytelling. And remember, this is all personal. I'm just going to keep reminding you of that. This is my chart, people. In this quadrant, you have writers like Toni Morrison, who I know is a brilliant writer. I just could not break into her storytelling. Then you have writers like David Foster Wallace. Love his nonfiction, hate his fiction. Stop writing footnotes, David. I don't care about your personal opinions on lobsters in Maine to be in a footnote. Just give me a good story. And then you have others like Alice Walker, Colson Whitehead, and Ernest Hemingway. And ironically, Faulkner, this guy, once said of Hemingway, he has no courage and has never been known to use a word that might send the reader to a dictionary. I love all these writers sometimes just hate each other. But all these authors I adore for how well they write a sentence, but they were just not my cup of tea with their stories. In the bottom right are the opposite kind of people. Those authors who I think are the window writers. People who have a brilliant story but just don't care all that much about the structure of a sentence. Well, that's kind of an overstatement, but they're just authors that I don't come back to for their lapidary prose. People like Dan Brown. Good stories-ish, dreadful writer. And his stories lack a severe amount of good history in it as well. Not very historically accurate. Or writers like Danielle Steele. Read one book. I know she wrote a lot of others, but I won't come back to her for her writing. And maybe the greatest example of someone who is actually a great storyteller but a terrible writer is someone who's a filmmaker, actually. George Lucas. Fans of his work know that he's not a great writer, not even a good writer, but someone who trusted people who were better writers than he was. He just had the conceptual framework for a beautiful world and a beautiful story. Then you have some writers who are more well-known. I think Brandon Sanderson belongs in this category. I read one of his books and I'm very excited to keep going into his writing in this channel because I think he's a great storyteller. I read one book and I was in love with the story, but his writing is very window-like. He doesn't draw attention to his writing, which I actually love and find beautiful and admirable. I love when authors just use boring words and don't try to dazzle me with their words sometimes. I would put the controversial Joe Rowling in this category too. Great story, decent writer. She knows how to deliver a good story more than she knows how to write a good sentence, I think. And then I would also put some classic authors here too, like Alexander Dumas. He has some amazing stories to tell, but his writing style is very window-like to me. And one thing that I'm going to note too, because I have a few of these authors in both of these categories, some of these are translations of text, and I guarantee you that they're more beautiful in the original. So Dumas, I can't really put him in this category so much, but his translation to me is very window-like. Same ironically as Jane Austen. Although she is straddling a line here between good writer and great writer, I think she's an excellent storyteller. Shisako Endo is a perfect balance of a good writer and a good storyteller to me. And there's a few others in that mix too. Right before you kind of get into the upper echelon, I think, of the greatest writers of all time and some of my favorites, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But again, Shusaku Endo has a translation. He wrote in Japanese, which is why I love Japanese storytellers, and his work are translations. And the same thing, I believe the same thing is true of Kazuo Ishiguro. But I would also kind of put James Baldwin in this category. Unbelievable writer, unbelievable stories. Same thing as Zadie Smith, even C.S. Lewis, who I'd actually say is one of the best writers and best storytellers. And then in the top quadrant, you have my 3 favorite authors of all time for their rare ability to combine beautiful writing and a beautiful story. My 3rd favorite novel of all time is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. It is an incredible story where I found myself transfixed by the scale of that story, but also in love with the words and the sentences and how to pause to dissect certain sentences because of their beauty. My 2nd favorite book is The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I cannot tell you the level with which this story held me a prisoner. I could not read it fast enough, but did not want to finish it. I loved those characters so much, and I love that writing even more. I think Barbara Kingsolver is one of the best of our time. And then, my favorite of all time, in a book that I say God himself inspired to write because it's the rarest of gems. It is The Diary of Anne Frank. I cannot speak highly enough about this book. I think she was granted the gift of incredible words because I cannot read that without being blown away by both the quality of her words and then her story, which is just a story for the ages. And it feels really weird comparing anything to Anne Frank here, but I think most people would probably say that the godfather of all storytelling and English language and writing is the one and only Bill Shakespeare. Yes, he wrote some duds of plays, but no one has shaped the English language like he did. And he delivered on his stories too. They are so entertaining and so beautifully written. And up to this point, I would have said Tolkien is good. And maybe he belongs in the middle. But that was before I read The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, I would put J.R.R. Tolkien here. Maybe not as perfect with his words as people like Bill or my personal favorite Marilyn Robinson, but he is one of the most skilled writers that I have ever encountered in my life. I heard Malcolm Gwight say something similar to this in an interview he gave someone recently, but he said one of the characters and the joys of Fellowship of the Ring is the language that Tolkien uses, how he dances across the page and the words, how they are so beautiful and so shocking and so astoundingly gracious and lovely. I'm paraphrasing exactly what he said, but those are my words, as well as his. The way that he can make you feel something, like getting lost in a forest, just by the words that he writes is astounding. The way that he dances and glides over the page like he's having a great time, and then just dropping a bit of wisdom on you through a character when you least expect it is again nothing short of a masterclass on writing. I don't think I have read anyone who can do horror and thriller better than Tolkien can. And to be honest, I don't really read horror and thriller that much, so maybe you know better authors who can do that better than I know. Maybe Stephen King is on this list for you or something like that. Or even Edgar Allan Poe, who I would probably say is very high on this list as well. But the way that Tolkien makes you terrified by words on a page is paramount. And the way he can write an emotionally moving scene. I mean, if you've watched any of my essays, you know that I choked up a few times when just reading the text on the page for its clarity and ambiguity and also its beauty. And I want to go on for like an hour and just continually talk about Tolkien and his words and how brilliant of a story this was. But I have about 10 hours worth of essays that I did on Fellowship of the Ring. So all this is a push to go check out those videos. There is a playlist on this channel, and it is full of my thoughts on the reading of Fellowship of the Ring for the first time. And it's my thoughts on Tolkien's writing and how masterful he is at different chapters and horror and emotionally moving scenes and just like the wisdom that he has that he lays up. So please go check out those essays because I have about 10 hours worth of proof for how J.R.R. Tolkien is so perfectly, beautifully good of a writer. Maybe the best that I've ever read. It's a weird combination of words, but I think Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring is perhaps one of the greatest books that I have ever read, and it cemented something that I didn't even really think about. That J.R.R. Tolkien is perhaps one of the greatest writers who has ever written in the history of the English language. And that is a hill that I might die on. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. And I'm very excited to keep going and read The Two Towers. And I'm going to do lots of essays on that and analyze his writing and analyze my first time read through that. So make sure you subscribe if you like that kind of thing. And I will see you in